discuss all of this is our senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara. Marwan, very, very good to see you. So when we last spoke about a week ago, and it was before the UN Security Council was hearing this resolution that was put forward by America that wasn't passed, and one of the ideas that you talked about is that one of the ways, instead of threatening Israel with withdrawing aid, that one of the things that America would consider is giving them more military aid as an incentive. And that's exactly what we've seen happen since the UN Security Council passed that resolution, since the ICJ told Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza. It's not doing either of those things. And yet the US has approved more weapons to Israel.
It's mind-boggling. For an observer, for an objective observer, it's mind-boggling. For a student of international relations and of American policy in the Middle East, there's hardly anything surprising there. That's why it wasn't genius on my part to predict that. I think there's a pattern there in US-Israel relations and in American relations with its allies around the world. And usually they're not exactly the good guys. They're the most autocratic regimes usually. But the way the United States uses leverage is possibly to reduce aid, especially military aid, for autocratic regimes. And I think the occupation regime is probably one of the most autocratic regimes. Or increase aid, military aid. And I think the United States generally leans towards increasing aids for two reasons. One, it has even more leverage on the country and its use of that aid, that military aid. Two, because it's very good for the military-industrial complex in the United States.
But is it effective if the United States really wants Israel to scale down its operations in Gaza, if it wants Israel to protect civilians, not go into Rafah, where at least 1.5 million civilians are? Is giving them more weapons going to deter them from doing those things that the US says they want Israel to do?
But does it? Does it? The last 6 months has shown us that the Biden administration speaks out of both sides of its mouth. On the one hand, the rhetoric is, we want less civilian casualties, we want the genocide to be a bit humane, a contradiction in term. We want you to have maybe a few pauses, we want you to be a bit more reasonable. We're not looking good around the world, our standing in the region is deteriorating, the international public opinion is up in arms, there are investigations at the ICJ, there is a UN Security Council, and so on and so forth. That's the rhetoric. In reality, and you have been, and you and I have been looking at this for the last 6 months, America has never stopped supporting Israel policy on the ground in real terms since October 7th. From the very beginning, Biden and Netanyahu agreed that they're going to have to defeat Hamas, that they must defeat Hamas, and that America will protect Israel if others will step in, like Hezbollah or whoever, the Houthis and so on. And America did exactly that.
Yeah.
And now Israel is bombing Syria, bombing Hezbollah and others in Syria and so on and so forth. And America is increasing the military aid. Because America and Israel, strategically speaking, they are still in agreement. Politically speaking, they might have some minor disagreements, but strategically speaking, unfortunately, and I say that with heavy heart, that Biden has been dealing cynically with this question. I was shocked the day before yesterday or 3 days ago when former President Obama said that Biden deals with Israel with moral clarity. Moral clarity? Yeah. It seems to me like more moral bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's really surprising coming from a President Obama, knowing how he felt about Netanyahu. Was there any chance that Israel was ever going to follow a UN Security Council resolution or what the International Court of Justice asked it to do if America was just going to increase weapons when that is perhaps the greatest leverage that the US has with Israel?
That's exactly what that's why I sounded like I was the odd man out the past few days, because I was quite, skeptical about the UN Security Council resolution having any meaning or any effect on the ground, because Israel was definitely not going to abide by it, and the United States is not going to do anything about Israel not doing anything about it. And in fact, Israel is going to speed up its bombardment in Gaza, and it will probably be invading Rafah. So not only has not that helped over the past several months. But in fact, everything that Netanyahu and his generals, band of generals, and fascists and fanatics in the cabinet, everything they said, and I say that again with truly heavy heart about the crisis of humanity that we live in nowadays, after 32,000 children, women, and civilians have been killed, is that everything they said from the very few first days in October, they continue to do it today, despite all the public protests, despite all the international law, international community, UN resolutions, so on and so forth. Everything they spoke of about the invasion, the land invasion, about the bombing, about the destruction of Gaza, about the heavy price that Gaza is going to pay, about the fact that they're going to stay there, that they're going to create a security zone, and that they're going to bring the Arabs in order to police under their security supervision.
Yeah.
All of that is happening today. It is incredible.
And all of it has been allowed to happen. Marwan,
Yes.
thank you very much. That's our senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara.